Okay.
Yes, I do. We are
Peace,
live.
peace, peace, peace and blessings, everyone. Maurice here with Brother Quito, and
Peace.
we're here for a special session today, where we're going to discuss what appears to be the imminent visit to Washington D.C. by President Felix Tshisekedi and President of the DR Congo and President Paul Kagame of Rwanda. Since the signing of a peace deal this June 27th of this year, the Trump administration has repeatedly shared that a follow-up White House signing is expected between the two presidents. And based on reports that have been coming out from a number of news agencies, it appears that the two presidents, Paul Kagame of Rwanda and Felix Tshisekedi of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, will be here in Washington on Thursday, December 4th. So a number of people have reached out to us, ask us, one, is this actually happening? and we've shared, well, it appears to be happening. Last week, President Kagame gave a briefing to the press in Kigali, and the bulk of the exchanges surrounded the Congo deal, and or the Trump deal, what many of us have called the peace for profit deal, as the Oakland Institute shared in a recent study a report that they released this month, and we'll share that Oakland Institute report with you all as well. So it does appear that it's going to happen, and we thought we'd come on and share with you or respond to your questions, because that's what, in large part, prompted our coming on today to respond to your questions about the peace deal, especially considering that it's taking place right here in Washington, D.C. Now, the fact that a peace agreement about the Democratic Republic of the Congo is taking place in Washington, D.C., already gives you a sense of what kind of deal this is, right? It's a deal that's driven by Washington and the interests of the Trump administration. And the very fact that is driven by Washington, by the Trump administration, should automatically trigger a host of concerns on the part of Congolese in particular and Africans in general. Because here again, we see that the fears of the Congo are being determined outside of the Congo. And it's for that reason that we at Friends of the Congo share that Congo's challenge is both internal and external. And it's external for a host of reasons. We're talking about a country the size of Western Europe. It's bordered by 9 other African countries, the only country on the African continent to have that many countries bordering it. And it is strategically located in the heart of the African continent, right? Straddling the equator. In a lot of respects, Congo is the fulcrum on which the continent swings. And this has been acknowledged and articulated both by the enemies of Africa and the friends of Africa. We go back to the 1960s, when the United States mounted the largest covert action in the world. According to its own documents, it's declassified documents that it released in 2013, I think 2013 and 2014 from the State Department, that was the largest covert action in the world at the time on the part of the United States to depose the democratically elected prime minister of the Congo, Patrice Emery Lumumba. And the chief of station of the CIA, Larry Devlin, he wrote a book about the whole affair entitled Chief of Station Congo. He said that we had to overthrow Lumumba, because if we didn't overthrow Lumumba, not only would we have lost the Congo, we would have lost all of Africa. So the CIA, the United States, centered Congo in relation to its African policy writ large. On the other end, on the other side, you had the revolutionary forces, the likes of Kwame Nkrumah, president of Ghana, Modibo Keïta, president of Mali at the time, Ahmed Sékou Touré of Guinea. They formed the nucleus of a vanguard Pan-African force with the aim of establishing what they call the United States of Africa under a Pan-African Union. And Nkrumah wrote about it as well in a book entitled Challenge of Congo. And in that book, at the outset, he lays out how he and Patrice Lumumba was entering into an agreement to make Congo the capital of the United States of Africa. So we see the centrality of Congo to the future of Africa. And a key challenge of the Congo is that the affairs of the Congo have not been determined by the people of the Congo. And we see here this, in a lot of respects, this continuing 60 years later to this very day, where in a lot of respects, the future of the Congo, and by extension, Africa, is being determined as we speak, right here in Washington, D.C. So our being based here in D.C., organizing in D.C., organizing in the United States, it's of particular concern to us, especially seeing that we're in solidarity with frontline forces in the Congo who have shared with us, articulated, since the capture of Goma and Bukavu earlier this year, January and February, that the local population, the frontline communities know very little about this deal or the deals, because there seem to be more than one, have not been included. Their voices haven't been included. And from what they do know, their concerns have not been taken into consideration. So they have questions, you have questions, and we thought we would take a moment based on what we know here in Washington, D.C., from speaking with members of Congress, policy officials, and really being here for some time and seeing the range of U.S. policies that have been issued around the Congo and the impact that they've had on the ground in the Congo. So make no mistake about it. What happens in Washington has an impact on what unfolds in Goma, Bukavu, Kisangani, Kinshasa, Lubumbashi, Kolwezi, you name it, right? And it's for that reason, it's for that reason that we see the Congolese government, for example, hiring lobbyists in Washington to lobby Washington officials to advance policies that would benefit the political elite in Kinshasa, in the Congo. In fact, we know that, at least up until this year, the Congolese government itself had lobbyists, hired lobbyists. Some opposition figures hired lobbyists in Washington. The state company, Jacomine, hired lobbyists in Washington. If we go back, we've even had the Electoral Commission of the Congo hired lobbyists. So here it is that they're spending millions of dollars. They're all the way in the Congo, and they're spending millions of dollars in Washington with attorneys and lobbyists to shape policies that affect them all the way back in the Congo. I want you to just sit with that for a moment. Congolese government opposition figures, state companies, all paying millions of dollars, right, to lobby firms in Washington to have an influence on U.S. policy as it relates to the Congo. So if there's any doubt, right, about whether or not what happens in Washington affects the Congo, you just look at the political elite in Kinshasa and how they spend their money, and that'll give you an indication. So the only Congolese that, or the main Congolese that do not have lobbyists are the people, the frontline organizations, the oppressed masses. And that's where you and you come in. Friends of the Congo comes in order to advocate on their behalf, to provide a platform for their concerns to be heard, to educate people, U.S. citizens in particular, about the aspirations, concerns of the Congolese people, especially considering that so much here in Washington, that happens here in Washington, affects their lives. And it is for this reason why we facilitated, with your assistance, the visit to Washington of frontline organizers, women of the Basanja Coalition, a coalition of frontline organizations that we work with in the Congo, to come to Washington to engage policymakers, to engage officials, and raise their concerns among folks here in Washington, policy officials, elected officials, who may be inclined to hear and support the people of the Congo. And it's through your support that we've been able to facilitate such trips and interactions. And we call on you again to continue to support our efforts as we enter into our end of year fund drive. You go to our Facebook page, go to our Instagram page. In the bio, you see we're mobilizing funds in order to support frontline organizations in the Congo. As the Congo, as you know, it's been under attack since the start of this year. And it is the Congolese people, the remarkable women of Synergie des Femmes and the Basanja Coalition, of Sauti Ya Mama, CAFED, and just a host of other frontline organizations that you hardly hear of. They don't have social media accounts, Instagram accounts, or anything like that. And you don't hear about them. Even Mama Justine Masika of Synergie des Femmes, she's published an entire book, Women Resist War, to talk about the situation in the east of the Congo, the work that she and other women are doing as frontline defenders, as those who are first responders. And the first responders, make no mistake about it, are the Congolese people themselves, the Synergie des Femmes, the Sauti Ya Mama, and the CAFEDs, and those organizations that are coming to the aid of their fellow Congolese. So we encourage you to continue to support them by supporting our end of the year campaign on Facebook and on Instagram. Just go on the bio on Instagram, you'll see that campaign. So now, to that long introduction, sorry to the questions, Brother Quito. One of the questions that came in, what is the so-called peace deal? Why is Kagame and the president of Rwanda and Felix Tshisekedi, the president of the DR Congo, coming to Washington? Well, the Congo has suffered and been the victim of a 30-year war of aggression and plunder by its neighbors, primarily Rwanda, led by Paul Kagame. He's been in power for over 3 decades now. Yoweri Museveni of Uganda, he's been in power for over 4 decades. And these two leaders in particular have the Congo in a death trap, where they've invaded Congo twice, first in 1996 Then again, in 1998, the second invasion. That second invasion, often referred to as Congo's first world war, because you had 11 countries that were, up to 11 countries that were involved. It triggered the death, if we were to believe the survey mortality study done by the International Rescue Committee, of 5.4, an estimated 5.4 million Congolese. And right up to this very day, we see these two countries still very much engaged in a destructive way in the east of the Congo. Most recently, since 2021, the end of 2021, start of 2022, we've seen the Rwandan government in particular support proxy militia called the M23 militia that was defeated by the Congolese military, the United Nations through what they call the Force Intervention Brigade, heavy diplomatic pressure from the United States and other Western governments in 2012. They went back into hibernation in 2012 in Rwanda and Uganda, and they were resuscitated at the end of 2021 with by Rwanda's Paul Kagame. And since that time, they've captured large territories in the east of the Congo. And in January, the end of January this year, they recaptured Goma again. They had captured Goma in 2012, and they were beaten back in 2012. Then it was under President Obama. And now in 2025, they recaptured Goma. They've also captured Bukavu and a large swath of territory filled with precious and strategic minerals, coltan and tin and gold and other minerals. So that territory in the east of the Congo is currently occupied by, according to the United Nations and Western intelligence sources, by Rwandan soldiers and the Rwanda-backed M23, which the United Nations group of experts, especially in this latest report in July, said that the M23 is under the command and the control of Rwanda. So that being the case, that Rwanda, for all intents and purposes, controlled the east of the Congo, the Congolese government entered into an agreement in June of this year, an agreement which is called the Washington Peace Accords. I think, Kito, you may be able to share the link. I'm going to share it with you in the chat,
Okay.
so people can access the peace agreement that's on the website of the State Department. So the foreign ministers of the DRC and Rwanda signed this agreement on June 27th of this year. And the agreement had 6 parts to it. And those who've been following the situation in the Congo, you quickly recognize that the agreement that was signed really had little to do with the realities on the ground. And just one quick example. When the agreement first came out, just as an exercise, we did a survey, just a search through the agreement. Now, mind you, the east of the Congo, I just shared it in the chat there, Kito, you can share with the folks. The east of the Congo has been under control by Rwandan soldiers and the M23 since different parts of it increasingly since 2022. The first city to be captured by the Rwanda-backed M23 was Bunagana in 2022, a border town between the DRC and Uganda. Now, the M23 has, with Rwanda's backing, has increased its capture of territory since that time for the last 3 years, right? Displacing millions of Congolese. There's up to about 7 million internally displaced Congolese, right? M23, backed by Rwanda. They've been the driving force of the displacement that's taken place in the east of the Congo, the instability, the capturing of mines like the Rubaya coltan mine, for example, that a number of U.S. investors are trying to get access to now with the expectation of the signing of this peace deal. So when the agreement came out in June, we just did a word search just to see, because the M23 is a driving force of the instability, just to see how many times it appeared. And M23 appeared 3 times in this peace accord. 3 times. The driving force of the instability that's backed by Rwanda appeared 3 times. And one of the 3 was in the glossary explaining what M23 was. So we wondered, what kind of agreement is this that is signed by the Congolese government that barely mentions the belligerent force, right? So then we did another search on the FDLR, Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda. And they appeared about 42 times in the search, right? So just from that cursory search, see that the agreement is being driven by the Rwandan narrative, because Paul Kagame and Rwandans say, well, we're exercising what they call defensive measures in an effort to combat the M23. So to the extent that if you all say we're in Congo, this is what Kagame says, we're there to battle the FDLR. Now this is a rump force, right, that almost by all accounts do not represent a security threat to Rwanda. In fact, previous Congolese governments have invited Rwandan military into the Congo to go after the FDLR. But since the genocide in Rwanda in 1994, Rwanda in particular, and Uganda to some extent, had used the presence of the FDLR, Democratic Forces for Liberation of Rwanda, as a rationale for sending its military into the Congo. And they use it to this very day. Now, interestingly enough, both Rwanda and Uganda, both their militaries, have fought each other on Congolese soil in the so-called Six-Day War, June of 2000. And they fought each other not to see who could get to the FDLR first, but over minerals. So what is clear over the years that with very little doubt that this notion of Rwanda pursuing FDLR in the Congo has little to no merit. Now, I shared with you that Rwanda has been back in the M23 since 2022. Since that time, according to the International Monetary Fund, around 2022, Rwanda's export of gold was about $300 million plus, right? Export of gold. Since the occupation of the Congo, where Rwanda's controlled and commanded the M23, to today, the IMF said Rwanda is exporting up to about $2 billion in gold. So obviously this enterprise in the Congo has been profitable for the Rwandan government. A little over 300 million in 2022 when the first occupation took place. Today, almost $2 billion. That's just gold. We're not talking about coltan and tin and other minerals, right? So if you just dispassionately look at the data and the evidence to see the extent to which Rwanda has been profiting, and this is just in the last 3 years. In 2001 to 2003, the United Nations published 3 studies on the illicit exploitation of Congo's minerals. And they documented the exponential increase in exports of timber, gold, tin, coming out of both Uganda and Rwanda since their invasion and occupation of the Congo. So this has been a 3-decade-long war of aggression, war of plunder that's accrued to the benefit of the Rwandan state. So that's why it was so surprising to see that the Congolese government signed such an agreement where the question of the M23 was relegated to another process, what they call the Doha process, Qatar, where the Congolese government entered into discussions with the M23 around matters of peace. So you have 2 processes that have been unfolding. One in Washington, one in Doha, both of them outside of Congo, both of them outside of Africa, and the affairs of Congo and by extension Africa is being determined externally, right? So that's the peace deal. Now, we shared with you the fact that how the FDLR is front and center and M23 in Rwanda is relegated to the sidelines, and Congolese government signed on to an agreement that described Rwanda's invasion and capture of its territory as defensive measures. Rwanda unleashed thousands of forces to capture the city of Goma, right? And they described that as defensive measures that the Congolese government co-signed to. And this is in the face of the entire world represented by the United Nations Security Council, the 15-member UN Security Council. In February of this year, they had a vote about the conflict in the Congo, the invasion and occupation of the Congo by Rwandan forces. And they issued a resolution, Resolution 2773. I don't know if you can find that, Quito. Resolution 2773. If you just do a search on Resolution 2773, the entire United Nations Security Council, 15-0, unanimously voted. And one of the key aspects of the vote that they made was, 1, Rwanda should withdraw its soldiers from Congolese territory immediately. They called on the Rwandan soldiers to withdraw from Congolese territories immediately, without any conditions. Withdraw immediately, without any conditions, and sever its ties with the M23. Now, you may ask the question, well, why didn't the Congolese government rally behind this resolution to pressure or to persuade or to engage the United Nations itself to put some teeth behind this resolution? I mean, you have the consensus of the entire world saying that this neighboring country has violated international law, invaded your country, occupied your territory, displaced your population, steal your resources, raped your women, but yet you didn't advocate. So that's so bewildering. Of course, we have our suspicions as to why that they didn't push that forward. So Resolution 2773 represents a path forward for the international community that the Congolese government chose not to pursue. So they pursued the Washington Accord. And that Washington Accord has a range of elements in it, one of which is a commitment on the part of the Congolese government to go after the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, the FDLR, who incidentally are mostly found in the territory that is captured and occupied by Rwanda in the M23, a territory that Congolese soldiers do not have access to. So it's really interesting to see how it is that they're going to go after the FDR, right? That's one part of it. Another part of it's like a 6-point chord. Quito shared it in the chat. Another part of it says, has what they call the regional economic integration framework, right? It's a framework that those of you who follow Congolese politics over the years, it's really a rehashing of what they call the Sarkozy-Cohen plan in the name of former French leader Sarkozy and former ambassador Herman Cohen here in Washington, where they basically made the argument in the Sarkozy-Cohen plan that east of Congo is so wealthy that they really need to share the wealth with its neighbors. And that's fine, to share the wealth with the neighbors, but on whose terms? At the point of a gun that's being pointed at you by Paul Kagame and Yoweri Museveni? Or is it through cooperation? So this regional economic framework, the integration economic framework, is on the table. And that's where the illicit trade in minerals coming out of the Congo is benefiting Rwanda can now be done licitly because it will be sanctioned through this agreement. And that's a part of the peace deal, which many people question. How is it that the president of the DRC is going to come to Washington, sign a peace deal that legitimizes the plunder of Congo's minerals by the Rwandan state, and sign that deal while Rwandan soldiers are still occupying the east of the Congo? Now, both presidents addressed this question last week in advance of their visit to Washington. President Tshisekedi, who was in Serbia, visiting Serbia, stated that, well, we're going to Washington, but we're not going to sign that part dealing with the regional economic integration framework as long as Rwanda's soldiers are on Congolese soil. I find that dubious. We find it dubious. If that's if the soldiers are a concern of yours, as we said, you should have been pushing Resolution 2773 at the United Nations, but you didn't. Right. You signed this agreement in June. And if it is a concern of yours, you would have made a firm stand that we're not coming to the White House to be with you, Donald Trump, Paul Kagame, as long as they're Rwandan soldiers on Congolese soil. But he didn't say that. He only hung on to that fig leaf of, well, we're not going to sign the part, we're not going to subscribe to the regional economic integration part. So we'll see. Meanwhile, Kagame was holding court, as he sometimes does with the press in Rwanda. And the journalist asked him a question, which was a major concern to those who are looking to provide humanitarian relief to the Congo. Because Congo is captured by Rwanda and the M23, the airport has been closed since early this year, since February of this year. And what that means is that international humanitarian relief cannot be flown into Goma. So Kagame was asked, about this question, that there was a demand coming from humanitarian organizations, a demand coming from the Congolese government to open up a corridor so that humanitarian relief can get in to the east of the Congo. And the United Nations and the World Food Program are already saying that Congolese are dying from starvation, right? That's what the United Nations World Food Program is saying. And the a representative of the World Food Program, Cynthia Jones of WPF, she said that and this is a quote from her from the United Nations, we're urgently calling for a humanitarian air corridor to be established. Now again, they're calling for a humanitarian air corridor to be established so that they can get food in to the Congolese people that the United Nations says some people are already dying because of hunger, starving because of hunger. So Kagame responded to this, and he responded in a clever way. He was saying that he starts out by saying, if I were them, meaning if I were the M23, right? Now remember, the United Nations group of experts said that Rwanda has control and command of the M23, in addition to Rwandan soldiers being embedded with the M23, right? That's what the reports have stated. But Kagame says that if I were them, as if he didn't control anything, right? He went on to say, I would tell them that you need to resolve my problem in Goma before I give you access. You need to resolve my problem in Goma, right? We have the video is up. I don't know if we can share it now, but we'll be sharing it. We don't have it right now, Kita. We'll share it later. It's been widely circulated on X. The whole press conference is on YouTube. So it kind of reminded me a little bit of how Israel blocked humanitarian efforts from getting into Gaza as they're carrying out a genocide against the Palestinians. Not fundamentally different from that, right? So they're not even letting humanitarian aid in that's being a corridor to be opened up. And make no mistake about it, if you want to get into Goma and east of Congo today, you go through Rwanda. Some people go out through Uganda, but a lot of people go through Rwanda to get to the east of Congo. So Congolese government headed to Washington, D.C., provided it does happen, because there's been many reports that this signing is supposed to take place. Now, this deal, a question that came up, whose interest does it serve? From what we've seen thus far, right? What we've seen thus far, it certainly serves the interests of the president of Rwanda, because the illicit trafficking of minerals can now become licit under the framework of this deal. No pressure has been put on him. No kind of accountability has been put in place for the 7,000, some say 10,000 people who have been killed during the occupation of Goma, the millions that have been displaced. So this question of accountability is still absent. This question of impunity is still running rampant. And certainly, as the women who came to Washington and even the Congo's Nobel Peace Prize laureate, Denis Mukwege, shared, the question of justice is totally absent. No question of justice whatsoever. And it may sound like a cliche, but without justice, there can be no peace. If there is no justice, if the people of the Congo do not get justice, it's hard to see how you can have any peace. So it benefits Kagame. Sure, Kagame is one of the beneficiaries. Another beneficiary certainly is the political elite in Kinshasa. Why? Well, they felt under threat as Rwanda and its M23 was moving, capturing territory and moving. If you know Congo's history, the pattern in 1996, they started capturing territory from the east. If Kisangani falls, it's downstream to Kinshasa. That's what happened in 96. Same thing happened in 98. If it wasn't for they'd gotten, they meaning Rwanda and Uganda, had gotten to the outskirts of Kinshasa. But if it wasn't for the Zimbabweans and the Angolans, particularly the Angolans that came in and pushed them back, they would have captured Kinshasa. So knowing that history, 96 history, 98 history, the political elite in Kinshasa was certainly concerned. But with the intervention of the Trump administration through its senior advisor, Masad Boulos, the senior advisor for Africa, we saw that the advance of the M23 pretty much halted the Rwanda-backed M23 at Walikale. And it was interesting about this intervention, which by Masad Boulos, which segues into the interests of the Trump administration and the U.S. and the United States. Masad Boulos had made a trip to the region. The Rwanda-backed M23 had captured Walikale, and Walikale territory, the area there, is a major tin mining site, right? The Bisi mine that's there. When the M23 captured the territory, the price of tin skyrocketed on the global market. And one of the demands that Masad Boulos, or requests that he made of Kagame, was that for the M23 to retreat from Walikale and allow the shutdown Alphamine mine to reopen and continue, which they did, stabilize tin prices. So Alphamine is partly owned by an American company. What we see is the economic interests taking the fore on the part of the Trump administration. Bloomberg News and a bunch of our Financial Times, a bunch of other sources have reported how the different figures who are lined up to get access to minerals in the east of the Congo, provided that a peace deal is actually implemented. We've seen cobalt metals, for example, with investors, Bill Gates, Michael Bloomberg, Jeff Bezos. I think they've raised about $1 billion, at least around $1 billion so far this year, to get access to lithium mines in the east of the Congo, southeast of the Congo, in Manono. And they've entered into an agreement with the Congolese government around that. And we've also seen that an interesting individual by the name of Gentry Beach, he was out of Texas, and he was Donald Trump's campaign finance co-chair. So he's lining up to get access to Rubaya, which is the largest coltan mine on the African continent, probably in the world. It is responsible for about 10% of coltan production, right? Those of you who are familiar with or may not be familiar with coltan is a colloquial term used for the scientific term columbite tantalite. And when tantalite is refined and processed, it's refined and processed into capacitors that are heat resistant and retain electric charge, which enables you to build larger or smaller devices that are more powerful. And you find these capacitors in our cell phones, video games that our children play, just a range of electronic devices, right? We have a coltan fact sheet on our website. If you go to Quito, I can share this link with folks where they can access the coltan fact sheet, friends of the Congo.org. If you can share this link that I'm putting in the chat with folks. And you can get the coltan fact sheets on minerals, a range of fact sheets on our website. So what the interests of the Trump administration and the billionaire class in the U.S. are the minerals in the Congo. And they see the peace deal as a path to that. Apparently, the carrots, one of the carrots in diplomatic talk offered is investments. It's the Trump administration, divisions of the U.S. government, Export-Import Bank, International Finance Development Corporation. They're rallying some $2.5 billion in cohort and concert with a Wall Street hedge fund to try and get up to $5 billion, all to protect the U.S. investments that are supposed to go into the east of the Congo, provided that this peace deal comes to fruition. So Paul Kagame, his interests are met. Felix Tshisekedi, the political class in Kinshasa, who, they get paid whether Congolese live or die. They get paid whether Congolese territory is occupied or not. They get paid whether Congolese women are raped or not. They're going to get paid. They're getting their, irrespective of how good or bad they do with their job, they get paid, right? So their interests are served. And then you have Trump administration and the billionaire class in the U.S. who are getting access to minerals. The Oakland Institute, they released a remarkable study, fascinating study about the peace deal that in October, right? A report, and highly recommend that you consult this report by the Oakland Institute. It's entitled Shafted, the Scramble for Critical Minerals in the DRC, where they share with you who the beneficiaries are. They name the names, right? And I'm sharing that keto that you can share with folks. So highly recommend that you go through the Oakland Institute's report entitled Shafted. Right? So these are the folks who benefit from the sole entity or force where there's no clear beneficiary are the Congolese people, right? And in fact, if we look dispassionately at the evidence since the signing of the agreement on June 27th of this year, we see that the Congolese people continue to catch hell. According to the UN group of experts, according to Amnesty International, according to Human Rights Watch, they've documented increase in rape, disappearances, the targeting of ethnic groups, all since the agreement. In fact, in August, I think it was late August or in August, I believe it was in August, the UN Security Council had to call an emergency session because of the crisis in the occupied territories of the Congo. So it's the Congolese people that continue to pay a dear price for the deals that are being signed and established among the local and regional elites in the Great Lakes region of Africa and the global elites in Washington and Doha, right? So the global elites continue to profit at the expense of the Congolese people. To respond to that question, the question, what should I ask the Canadian government to do? Well, Canada is an interesting case. As a result of some pressure earlier in the year, which I just don't understand why the Congolese government didn't keep it up. It's just remarkable. We're still trying to just reconcile that in our minds. We saw that the UK, to some extent, Germany and Canada either said they're going to either withhold aid or said they're going to withhold aid from Rwanda because of Rwanda's violation of international law, its invasion, occupation of Congolese territory. Okay, so I think for Canada, they should continue to pressure the Canadian government or appeal to the Canadian government to keep the pressure on Rwanda. in terms of cutting military ties, in terms of cutting aid. Now, Toronto and the Toronto Stock Exchange is, for all intents and purposes, is the capital of mining in the world, right? Toronto's, one can say the Toronto Stock Exchange is the capital of mining in the world. Why I say that? Because mining requires capital. Industrial mining requires capital. And the bulk of the capital raised for investment in mining projects in the world, I think more than half, is raised on the Toronto Stock Exchange. A good number of the companies in the Congo are trading on the Toronto Stock Exchange. So a number of years ago, we worked, those of you in Canada will be familiar with the Canadian Union of Public Employees, CUPE, Canadian Union of Public Employees, try and get them to the pension funds of the teachers and the workers that are invested in these Canadian mining companies, which in turn exploit Congo's minerals, to try and get CUPE to put pressure or to withhold its investment in these companies that are involved in the Congo, that are exploiting the Congo to their benefit and the benefit of the stockholders, which among them would be members of the Canadian Union of Public Employees, to try and cease their support, or at least put pressure at shareholder meetings on these companies that were benefiting from Congo's minerals at the expense of the Congolese people. So putting pressure on the government, putting pressure on the companies through your labor entities or formations like Canadian Union of Public Employees would be a really good start on the part of Canadians. And joining us, going to freecongo.org to sign up so we can come in and share with you what's happening and other steps that you can take in order to support the Congolese people and frontline organizers inside of the country. So there's a lot that can be done out of Canada. I highly recommend that you consult the writings of Canadian author Judy Rever. I can put that in the chat. Quito. She wrote In Praise of Blood, a damning critique of the international community and their compliance, or not compliance, but their soft touch when it comes to Rwanda and the crimes that Rwanda has committed in the Congo. And she has another book coming out recently. So she's a really good source to educate yourself about the geopolitics of the region, the Great Lakes region. So that's something else that you can do as well in terms of bringing yourself up to speed on the intrigue and the players and the interests that come out of Canada and elsewhere. I'm going to look at a few more questions as we've gone over the hour already. Kita and I haven't answered enough questions. Let's see, a few more questions that came in about the deal. Let's see. Why was the deal brought about in June 2025? It was the outcome of a process. In April, Rwanda, NSM 23 captured Goma and Bukavu the end of January into February. At the end of February, I think it's the 21st of February, 21st or 25th, right? End of February, in any case, the UN issued the resolution 2773. The Congolese president, Felix Tshisekedi, he had reached out to the Trump administration after observing what had unfolded between Ukraine and the United States, where the Trump administration was pressuring Zelensky to basically cough up its minerals for a minerals for security deal. And Tshisekedi rushed right in and said, "We have minerals here in the Congo. Let's talk." And the Trump administration responded in kind. They thought it was interesting what the president of the DRC was putting on the table. Mind you, the bulk of the critical minerals or transitional minerals, let's say, like we're talking about copper and cobalt, is already spoken for by the Chinese. The Chinese have about 80% of those minerals in the Grand Katanga, in the south of the Congo. But there are other options as well. But the pickings are slim when it comes to copper and cobalt. When we talk about lithium and you talk about coltan, you talk about tin, and that's where you see right now the bulk of interest on the part of the investors that are coming to the table from the United States, because the Chinese have got a lock already. So the subsequent to the deal that the Congolese president put on the table, we saw in April the foreign ministers of the DRC and the DR Congo and Rwanda came together in Washington under the auspices of the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and signed what they call Declaration of Principles. And after the signing of the Declaration of Principles, both parties went back to iron out the details around that. With pressure and input from the United States, they finally came to an agreement. And as I've shared with you, Quito shared, we can share, I think I have the Declaration of Principles that we can share as well, Quito, with the folks here. See if I can pull it up and share the Declaration of Principles. Public schedule, June 27th. Okay, here's the Declaration of Principles. I'm going to share that so people can see the progression of the peace deal, what they're now calling the Washington Accord. So I share that, Quito, you can share it with the group. So that's really the timeline, the capture, occupation of Goma, which is still, and Bukavu, Eastern Congo, which is still under occupation to this day. The UN resolution coming out in February. The offer on the part of the Congolese president, Felix Tshisekedi. And then the Declaration of Principles in April. And then the signing of the Washington, what they call the Washington Accord on June 27th. And then now, provided that it actually happens, December 4th, this Thursday, the meeting of the signing in the White House with the presidents, which is going to be really interesting. As those of you who follow the presidency, the Trump presidency, each White House visit is like a reality TV show, right? Especially when African presidents go, well, across the board, it's like a reality TV show. So it's just going to be interesting to see, provided it does happen, Tshisekedi and Kagame in the White House with Donald Trump. If it wasn't such a serious matter, and if people weren't catching hell on the ground, it would certainly be comedic. You can expect it to be, right? Provided that it does happen. Reuters and other news agencies are reporting that it's going to happen. Let's see the next question that folks asked. We'll try and get through all of these questions. If people are asking about the peace deal, we'll respond to the questions and then send you links as well. I already stated who the parties are involved. That's in this signing. It's mainly the president of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, and the president of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Felix Tshisekedi. The M23 and its leadership, that has been dealt with in Doha, Qatar. We're getting reports that other African presidents are going to be in the House. William Ruto of Kenya is supposed to be there. So we'll see if he actually shows up and if there are going to be others there as well. Wouldn't be surprised if João Lourenço, heading up the African Union, would be represented as well. Angola, before Lourenço, the president of Angola, became head of the African Union, or took up the post of leading the African Union in this year, he was spearheading what they call the Luanda process. There were like two peace processes going on around this. Nairobi Peace Accord, which was being led by the East African community, and then the Luanda Peace Accords being led by João Lourenço, of the president of Angola. And that was the African Union's path to peace. And there was agreement that was supposed to be signed in the Luanda Accords, right, in December of 2024. But Kagame was a no-show. He didn't show up to sign the agreement. It was supposed to be an agreement that the Biden administration was backing as well. We've even seen reports since then from officials in the Biden administration that said that as a part of the carrot, and here again with diplomatic talk. In diplomatic talk, they talk about carrots and sticks. Sticks are supposed to be pressure that you put on parties to get them to do something, and carrots are what you offer, like, for them to sweeten the pot, so to speak. And the carrots that the Biden administration offered President Kagame, according to former officials in the Biden administration, was to extend the Lobito corridor up to Rwanda, right? As a carrot, as an offer. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the Lobito corridor is a rail line that runs from Kolwezi, in the heart of the copper and cobalt belt, out through Angola, through the Lobito port, that was completed. There was an existing rail line developed by the Chinese that ran from the port to the border of Angola, and then that rail was extended through investments from the West. And the first shipment of copper on that line came at the end of 2023, start of 2024, with the mining company headed up by Robert Freeland as a CEO. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on that mining company, but I'll get the name of the mining company that had the first shipment. It was between a Canadian mining company and a mining company that trades on the Canadian Stock Exchange, and a Chinese company that ran the first shipment of copper out. Now, this Lobito corridor, and they offered, the Biden administration offered Kagame to be a part of it, have the line run up to Rwanda. Now, this Lobito corridor is really the Ivanhoe mines, Ivanhoe, IVANHOE, headed up by Robert Freeland, the CEO. So this Lobito corridor is supposed to be a flagship initiative on the part of the United States, the European Union, and the G7, right? The US, the European Union, G7, they launched what they called the Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment. Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment, PGI or PGII. And that's supposed to be the West's response to China's Belt and Road Initiative, right? So in competing with China, the West said they launched the Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment, where they said they're going to go into Global South countries and invest locally and add value locally in the value chain, in the supply chain. And they see that as a way of competing with China, because they're arguing that China is extracting minerals or involved in these minerals for infrastructure deals, and value is not being added locally in the Global South, right? So one of the initiatives under the Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment is the Lobito corridor, which the Trump administration has carried on from Biden, right? And this is a way that the U.S. and the West sees that they're going to compete with China, which is kind of interesting, which is not entirely true, because as I shared with you, although the Biden administration, and when they were going out in 2024, they trumpeted it as a major achievement for the administration in Africa. But as I shared with you, the the first shipment of minerals, Ivanhoe Mines and another, and a Chinese company along those the rail line is neutral. And Chinese and whoever wants to ship minerals out on it can. So I don't know to what extent it's really competing with China. But in any case, that's what was offered to Kagame by the Biden administration. So, what does each party want from the deal? I think I responded to that. What the Trump administration would get, what the and the billionaire class in the U.S., what the political elite in Kinshasa would get, and of course what Kagame would get. How's this deal helping or harming Congolese people, the Rwandan people, the African peoples? It's not helping. It's definitely not helping. And it doesn't stand to help. You know, the political elite in Kinshasa would make the argument that it's going to help because it's going to bring an end to the war. U.S. investments are going to come in. And as you know, I highly recommend that you read Shafted, that report by the Oakland Institute, which lays out who benefits. If you just think about it, if you look at the history of investments in the Congo in particular, you see that they benefit the local elites and they benefit the foreign investors. The Congolese people do not benefit. You know, we often say that Congo produces up to 75% of the world's cobalt, which is not entirely accurate. You can say that 75% of the world's cobalt comes out of the Congo, but it's not the Congolese people that benefit. It's being shipped out of the Congo by foreign companies, China Molybdenum, Ivanhoe Mines, right? These major corporations, right? So you have a situation where the masses of Congolese are scrounging to get by. According to the World Bank, I think up to 70 million of the 110 million Congolese, up to 70 million, live on less than $2.15 a day, right? And the World Bank also said there are about up to 2 million informal miners, small-scale miners. And that's where the Congolese, if they get any benefit, right, that's where they get the benefit, because those small-scale, so-called artisanal miners, they have an impact on the economy and the society 10 times their numbers, right? So that's why, you know, for example, we see people online and they're saying, well, you know, we need to boycott Apple. Well, you know, a boycott has already happened in the Congo. When the United States, to show the extent to which U.S. policy has an impact on the ground in the Congo, when the U.S. Congress passed the Dodd-Frank Act in 2010, there was a provision in that. There are two provisions in there, Section 1502 and Section 1504, that deal with Congo and Africa. But 1502 in particular, the so-called conflict minerals amendment, which calls on publicly traded companies to declare in their Securities and Exchange filing each year that there are no blood minerals in their supply chain, right? Now, the advocates of that policy, those who pushed it, you know, civil society groups in Washington who pushed it, they made a point to say that they didn't want to boycott these companies, right? They said they wanted the companies to do right. They didn't want to boycott or cause a boycott, right? Which is different from today. Those who are on social media today who are taking up those same rehashed efforts that were done over a decade ago, up to 15 years ago. They're just rehashing what was advocated for 15 years ago. They're saying, let's boycott, right? Which is, I don't know the wisdom of that. But in any case, a boycott did happen. When the Dodd-Frank Act was passed in 2010, the then President Joseph Kabila shut down the mining sector, right? He said nothing coming out. And studies that were done by think tanks in Washington, research folks. So that shutdown, which is what people are advocating for today, they're saying the logic that they have is like boycott Apple so that it shuts down the sector in the Congo, right? When that happened, hundreds of thousands of small-scale miners, or so-called artisanal miners, were out of it. They didn't have anything to do. They couldn't get their whatever they were digging out, right? So what that did was drove them deeper into poverty, incentivized them to get more, to go towards illicit means of earning an income, right? So, those who are advocating for boycott, what it's kind of interesting. What you'll notice is that happens on social media. I haven't seen any of the small scale miners in the Congo saying that they should boycott Apple or boycott anybody, right? They've come up with fundamentally different prescriptions, right? Because really what's needed is, if you look at resource-rich countries that benefit from their resources, you'll see like it's usually a state company that is capturing that wealth for the benefit of the people. And Congo's state company, Gécamines, it's not there. It's not, even looking at some data, a state company in Chile, they're generating some $18 billion or so from copper, right? That's just a state company, right? And that was a number of years ago. Looked at that those data, and Congo is the second largest producer of copper in the world, behind Chile. So imagine if the wealth was being captured by the state for the benefit of the people. And unfortunately, what we see as the people have been left to their own devices, and they're at the bottom of this electric vehicle technology, the bottom of this artificial intelligence supply chain, catching hell because they have no other choice. And so this capitalist system, boycotting it is not the answer for the Congolese. The Congolese can organize and pressure their government, right, to enter into deals that are better for the Congolese people, to better organize the state so that they can capture the wealth of the country, add value locally, right? There are a host of solutions and prescriptions that they're collectives of diggers, throughout the Grand Katanga, and members of the Basanja Coalition. Some of them are members of the Basanja Coalition, and they have clear policies around which we as advocates on the outside can amplify and support. And nowhere among those policies do they call for a boycott of anything. But in any case, those are documented. I encourage people. We have a series of films. If you don't believe me, just consult the films that we've produced, where you hear the miners themselves, in their own voices, tell you what they would like to see done. I'm going to share the films, Kito. You can share the films with the with the people. Share the films where people can access. So there's a series of films, a Basanja series of films, where you hear directly. It's filmed by Congolese, in Congolese voices. I didn't see the comment about the Lobito Quarter. If you can put that in here, and I can respond to it. The Basanja series of films, I highly recommend that you get the films, you get your universities, your libraries, your university libraries, your local libraries, to get those films where you hear directly from the miners, where they share the conditions that they're living in their own voices, and then they share with you what you can do, right? Which we've been organizing around. And the key thing you can do, several things, but certainly is to elevate their voices, is to frame what's happening in the Congo in a way that respects their agency. Like whatever is happening in the Congo, the exploitation, wars, all of that, It's not happening friction-free. You have folks on the front lines, like those in the Basanja Coalition, who are exercising agency, who are organizing, who are movement building in all parts of the Congo, whether it's in the rainforest, among indigenous people in the rainforest. The Basanja Coalition and their allies are there, delivering medicine, delivering relief, protecting the environment, providing support to indigenous communities, or whether it's in the West, in the peatlands. Congo is home to the largest tropical peatlands in the world. That's vital to protecting the planet as a whole. And you have indigenous communities in concert with their children who are scientists working with the indigenous communities to come up with prescriptions for protecting the peatlands, right? So you have Congolese scientists, young Congolese scientists, they're part of the Basanja Coalition as well, working with the indigenous communities in the peatlands who are primarily responsible for protecting the peatlands, which they do naturally as a part of their culture and heritage for thousands of years. And they're sharing with the Congolese government and the world community, which they did at the COP in Brazil, the Conference of Parties in Brazil in Belém this year. The Congolese, the Basanja Coalition showed up in force with young people, right, who are climate justice advocates, who are present in Belém, articulating the concerns, the prescriptions, the challenges of the indigenous communities coming out of the rainforest. So rainforests in the north, peatlands in the east, even folks, I mentioned Mama Justina Sika and others mobilizing in providing relief in dire conditions in the east of the Congo. And then in the south, you have minor collectives, women who are washing minerals, men who are digging, who are part of the Basanja Coalition. So the coalition is present in the north, in the west, in the east, in the south of the Congo, reach an estimated 2 million people. And you're familiar with them, Basanja, that you've been supporting over the years. So when this end of year campaign that we've launched on Facebook and on Instagram, those are the people you're supporting. Those are you're supporting frontline organizers, frontline communities who are responding to the crisis in the mining areas, responding to the crisis in the epicenter of the conflict, responding to the challenges in the heart of the rainforest in the north, responding to the challenges in the peatlands, right? So that's what you're supporting. That's what you've supported over the years. And as a result of your support, you've strengthened those institutions, those local institutions, in part because of your support, so that they can deal with the crises that are in front of them. Not only deal with the crises that are in front of them, but expand and grow the solutions that they've developed locally to bring about change in the Congo, right? So that's what you're supporting when you support those frontline communities. That's what those $20, like an average, going back to 2023, the first end of year campaign we raised $100,000 for folks on the front lines. And there was an average of $20 that was given. So your $20 was aggregated by Friends of the Congo, distributed to the Basanja Coalition in different parts of the country, like I just described. Same thing in 2024 when you came to their support. And our team, Kwajo and Kito, Grace and the others, they're calling on you again to support the coalition this year in our end of year campaign, which we kicked off today. And you can see the impact over the years. We're able to bring women from the Congo to Washington in part because of your support, so that their voices can be heard in international fora where decisions are being made that affect them directly on the ground, right? So continue to support the fund drive that's being led by our team, and that's benefiting. 100% of those funds go to the Basanja Coalition and their allies. And throughout the month of December, they're going to be sharing with you the work that's been done, the thousands, the tens of thousands of people that the GOVA of the Basanja Coalition reached in the Isangi district, right? The thousands of people in the south of the Congo that in Lumata, where the Euro funds went to develop an industrial well that brought water to a city that, or a village that of 20,000, they didn't have access to potable water, right? Or the resources that went to move women who are in the Bulengo camp into safe zones when they were being bombed at the start of this year and had nowhere to go. But because you invested in the Bassanja Coalition, there were safe spaces that were already there that they can go to. And on those safe spaces, they were to put up shelters. And then you supported them more. And because you supported them more with your donations, then they build structures. If you look at some of them are pinned on our Instagram page. Just take a look at some of the videos on our Instagram page where you see the building of structures, the acquisition of land to grow food that would serve the women would grow food to serve themselves. They were able to rescue some 150 families at the time, about 10 persons per family, over 1,000 people that were secured. And then they were able to, even in the midst of the crisis, to grow food, to feed themselves, and also support orphans, where you've provided support to initially this year to support over 2,000 children to be fed in school. And then you doubled down again and supported them, where there are 4,000 children are going to be fed since the start of the school year in September right up to December. The end of year campaign is going to dedicate $9,000 to our existing $9,000 that's been allotted to the feeding program of the children. So the point is that there's agency being exercised by a coalition of organizations on the front lines, and all you have to do is give $20, and we aggregate those $20. This year we're saying 5,000 people. 5,000 people give $20, and you'll support the coalition through the end of the year and into 2026. It said that Lobito Accord is a major infrastructure initiative aimed at economic enhancement, trade, and economic connectivity in Southern and Central Africa. It primarily involves, I don't see the question, it's just a comment. Primarily involves the expansion. Yes, I think that's what I shared about the Lobito corridor. And the Chinese may have something in response because you have a rail line, it's a long-time rail line that runs from the Indian Ocean that comes into Zambia. Zenjen rail line, I believe is a correct pronunciation, that could open up avenue from the Copper Belt to the Indian Ocean that Zambia and the Chinese are looking at. So in any case, we have a rich area of the continent where decisions are being made outside of the continent that could potentially have an impact on the continent for years to come. So this is not just a concern of Congolese and Rwandans. It's a concern of Africans overall. If you're concerned about the fate of the African continent, all eyes should be on Washington this week when Tshisekedi and Kagame come to Washington to meet with Donald Trump. I think I've explained the significance of Thursday's meeting between U.S. Tshisekedi and Kagame. That is not just significant for Congo and Rwanda, but for the whole. We're talking about a space, a strategic country in the heart of the African continent that our independence figures saw as the engine that would power the development of the continent. So if this engine that would power the development of a continent is captured by the billionaire class in the West, I think you have the answer as to what that will bode for the African continent as a whole. Now, I shared with you earlier that, just to give you an example, that up to 70 million Congolese live on less than $2.15 a day in a country where economists say there's about $24 trillion worth of natural wealth, right? That's about equivalent to the gross domestic product of the United States. Now, interestingly enough, 70 million Congolese, $2.15 a day, right? That's what they make, according to the World Bank. You have one Israeli billionaire. His name is Dan Gertler. He makes $200,000 a day, at least, right? I've seen figures go up as high as 300,000 in royalties because he has access to mines in the Congo. So one Israeli billionaire, $200,000 a day, 70 million Congolese, less than $2.15 a day. And according to the Treasury Department of the United States, who sanctioned him in 2016, 2017, said they sanctioned him for corrupt practices in the Congo. And he repatriates that wealth to Israel, right? So if the wealth of Africa is captured by the billionaire class in the West, then it just goes sucking out. That means no money for infrastructure, no money for education, no money for health, no money for develop your agricultural sector, right? All of which is lacking in the Congo in particular, right? So that's what's at stake. When you ask what's at stake, not just the future of Congo itself, but the future of the continent as a whole. And those decisions are being made right here in Washington this week, provided that it does happen. We'll see, because it's been trumpeted as being going to happen since June 27th. So let's see. No, there has not been any change in the deal that emphasizes change for the people. When those Congolese women came to Washington in June, they met with members of Congress, the Ways and Means Committee really of the United States Congress, really took to heart what they were saying. And that prompted them, the Ways and Means Committee, to draft a letter to Senior Advisor Massad Boulos and Donald Trump, inquiring about the concerns of the women, right? They wanted to know, in these deals that you're establishing, is there prior and informed consent? Does the local people have a say in these deals that are going to be established? Are the standards that we have here in the United States, as it relates to environment, as it relates to human rights, as it relates to labor conditions, are those going to be observed, right? So the women of the Congo have, as their allies in this particular instance, certain members of Congress, especially coming out of the Ways and Means Committee, who are calling for transparency, calling for inclusion, and calling for accountability around these deals that are imminent, apparently, right? So if you go to freecongo.org, we encourage you to go there. We have letters to members of Congress. We have some 75,000 people or so who have signed letters to members of Congress, call on the Congress to be more active in terms of addressing matters of accountability in the Congo and the Great Lakes region of Africa, right? So we've seen that this effort, when people often ask us, okay, you have these donation campaigns going, end of year campaigns, raising money for the front lines. We get that. We can donate $20, but we want to do more. So we encourage them to go to freecongo.org, and Tito can put the link in the chat, freecongo.org, if you want to do more. There's a list of things that you can do beyond donating that can help to make a difference and be a strong ally, be firmly in solidarity with frontline organizers in the Congo, and as I shared with you, in all parts of the Congo. The Basanja Coalition covers all parts of the Congo, and your support is a lifeline for a number of people in communities where the Basanja Coalition organize and work. Let's see a few more questions. Infrastructure, how can we assist Congolese people? I think I answered that question, how we can assist Congolese people in making sure their voices are heard. What action steps can we take? Beautiful. So I just responded to those questions in my last response in terms amplifying the voices from the ground. That's what Friends of the Congo exists to do. One of our charges. So that's why we publish Mama Justine's book, Women Resist War. If you want to find out about what's happening in the east of the Congo with the conflict, highly recommend that you read Mama Justine's book, Women Resist War. Brother Quito is going to put it in the chat for you, so that you can purchase it. We've had a number of book clubs, form a book club around the book, read the book and discuss it. If you reach out to us, we may even have Mama Justine join you in one of your discussions after having read her book. But that's a great way to support the work of Synergie des Femmes by purchasing Mama Justine's book. It's Christmas time. Purchase the book. Send it as a gift to your friends, your family members, your loved ones. Excellent way to support the work on the ground by purchasing Mama Justine's book, Women Resist War. Right? So that's a way. Another way to amplify the voices, as I've shared with you, is the films. The Basanja series of films, which Friends of the Congo is a producer of, with Alkibulan, film created by Alkibulan Productions, that we encourage you to get your libraries at your universities, get your faith institutions, get your community libraries to subscribe to those films so that you can screen them locally. And you screen them locally, let us know. We can join in after the screening to have discussions with you about further actions you can take beyond screening and discussing the film. So the point is, the Basanja Coalition is producing knowledge coming out of the heart of the African continent. These are Congolese who are producing knowledge, and they're reaching out to you to say, embrace what we're producing, learn from what we're producing, amplify what we're producing, share what we're producing. Congolese Voices, Women Resist War, Basanja Coalition, Basanja, a tree prayer. Mikuba deals with mining. Luanzo deals with the voices of the mining community. So there is no excuse. You can't say, well, I don't know what the Congolese people are saying, because we're sharing with you, it's right here, right? freecongo.org. You go to freecongo.org, you get access to all of those resources where you can hear Congolese voices. You can consume Congolese works, right? And then you take charge of amplifying it. You know, faith institutions, universities, high schools, elementary schools, right? Local libraries, your university libraries. We're trying to mobilize an army of people who are not only going to amplify and share the works of Congolese filmmakers, works of Congolese musicians, artists, writers, but also join in being in solidarity with them in the spirit of Patrice Lumumba. Remember Lumumba in his last letter to his wife, Pauline, before he was assassinated. He said to the Congolese people, he said, "We are not alone. Africa, Asia, free and liberated people from every corner of the world will be found by the side of the Congolese." So by virtue of you acting and being by the side of the Congolese people, you're breathing life into Lumumba's words. That's what you're doing, breathing life into Lumumba's words. You're letting the colonialists, the imperialists know that you may have killed a man, but you didn't kill his ideas, because we're building on his ideas today. We're fulfilling on his words today. And that means that Lumumba lives, right? Lumumba lives. As our young brother, Passy Bass, young musician in the Congo, who's dropped an album recently, and one of the songs in there was about Lumumba. You know, what would Lumumba say about today? And Lumumba, we want Lumumba to say that he did not die in vain, because you have an army of young people, the Gen Zs, the millennials, who are taking up his work, his words, and fulfilling them in solidarity with their Congolese brothers and sisters. So I think, Brother Kito, I've pontificated long enough, but we're going to be here throughout the week, right up to December 4th and beyond. We'll be follow our Instagram, our Facebook, X account, YouTube, as we give you insights about the deal, provide the signing ceremony in the White House, provided it does happen. Support our end of year campaigns that we've launched, and most importantly, stand in solidarity with the Congolese people on the front lines. We must make a declaration that irrespective of what the billionaire class, the local elites, the global elites do, we're not going to normalize the situation in the Congo. We're not going to normalize 6 million people dying, half children under the age of 5. We're not going to normalize 70 million people living on less than $2.15 a day. We're not going to normalize hundreds of thousands of women being raped. We're just not going to do that. So that's the request that we made. And we do not normalizing it by taking action. Free Congo, freecongo.org, to take action. You can go way beyond donating. We encourage you to do that. And you can do that at freecongo.org. Brother Kito, thank you so much for holding it down. We'll be back with you to give you updates. Go to freecongo.org, sign up there, sign up for our mailing list, and join this movement for a free, liberated, dignified, sovereign Congo, and by extension, free Africa. Peace, peace, peace.